Hey, it's Chris, Liege of Games. Let's talk July because July is already nearly upon us. And so we are looking forward because that's always what we do on the hype train. Choo, 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 choo. You know me, tongue in cheek, because that's the way our industry is slated. But I also like talking about things that you should have on your radar because, as always, I look at it as a way to help you budget. If you know what's out there, you can make decisions that then are right for you based on where you are at right now, even prior to the other stuff, or to help you figure out whether or not something should be on your radar or not in the first place. So, that being said, I have seven games for you that I think should be on your radar, or at least are on my radar in some capacity for the month of July. That being said, thumb it, comment down below on what you think, what ones you're hyped about, which ones I missed, and what else should be on my radar. And you know what? Subscribe if you're not, because I got more of this coming out. So let's do this. You know what? You thought it was going to be screen right now, didn't you? Well, that's because I'm actually going to be talking about this first. July 19, we have new expansions for the deck builder coming from Ivy Games, and this is Moonrakers. And I have the first two expansions right here in my hands. And that's because they are doing, again, sort of like what other games have done. I'm looking at you, Uprising Curse of the Last Emperor, addressing some of the issues, some of the downsides, some of the perceived faults of the core game in the first place. Now, in this case, you have two different expansions that are addressing it in two different ways. The first one right here, Binding Ties, as its name would suggest, this is offering, and this was the most divisive element in this 1 to 5 player game, this is the faction element. The faction element where you are aligning yourself with other players in order to achieve the quests and the missions. And there is a give and a take, and some people just do not like that. And it was a turnoff for people. And I can see that. In the solo game, it works really well because you just have the one cards of the solo automa that you're using and that you can sort of not really have to worry about too much. But some people just don't like that mechanic. And this takes that mechanic and makes it more important, and it gives incentive for you to want to do it. It gives you faction allegiance, ranking essentially, and it's going to entice you to get friendly with other factions to give you better stuff. You can gain it not only to get more immediate rewards in terms of upgrades and actions, but you can save it potentially to the very end to get the all-important victory points, or prestige points as they're called in this game. So the other expansion right here is Overload. And just like its name would suggest, it's an overload of content. Was there not enough parts to the ships? Was there not enough of a deck building aspect? Did you not have enough crew with the base game? Well, let me tell you, here is more of a good thing. Not only are they giving you more, they're also giving you advanced action cards. So if you were thinking this was too simplistic in some of the interactions or some of the parts alongside your ship building situations, this is what you need to be thinking about and considering. And rumor has it, maybe an email, that there's something special planned, secret. So if that doesn't pique your interest, let me tell you, you should. As someone who knows a little bit behind the scenes for once in my life, holy cow, I'm not allowed to tell you about it until later this month. Later July, that is. So you should be interested. Believe me, you should be. If you have tastes like me, I'll just put it that way. That's all I can say without getting yelled at. So that is game number 1. Let's go to game number 2, screen and screen. Next up, we have Burncycle, which is going head-to-head Chip Theory Games. Speaking of companies with deluxeified games and components, this is in the same line of Ivy Games. But unlike Moonrakers, this is a completely different type of game. You are basically hackers trying to get information, trying to netrunner-ish, only with chips going virtually as well as physically in the building. And like a lot of the Chip Theory games, a lot of people like it, but some people also don't. Shut Up and Sit Down just did a review of it, and they did not seem to be the biggest fans of it. Now, the biggest issue I have with some of the Chip Theory games, the ones I have been able to play, the ones I've been able to watch, the ones I've been able to, sort of sit down and really heavily look at, my biggest criticism has been very similar to another big company out there, Awaken Realms, where sometimes, similar to Simon, less is more. Less mechanics, less. Don't make it like necessarily streamlined. I'm not asking for like a filler game. I'm looking for something where more is not better. And it feels like to me with several of the games, I mean, I'm just even looking at Too Many Bones. it really is a lifestyle game because of how much there is, not in terms of content, but in terms of even learning to play it in the first place to make it smooth. Now, you're going to argue, oh, Chris, it's not that, it is that bad. If you take the vast majority of the hobby, they're not going to be interested in a game like that. And if you want to get more people appealed, from a general level, and maybe you don't, that's what I'm hoping for. Just, sort of like what the hope was with Arcs doing it for Oath, if you will. Not like, making it from here to here, but just, enough that you can get more people interested that may not have been interested in your game in the first place. The theme is absolutely fantastic. I love the sense of this. They are very heavily on the solo side of things, but I've also seen when it comes to a lot of these games from Chip Theory is they're better at the lower player counts. And so as someone who now is getting more experience at the lower player counts due to lack of availability of players, it's interesting. But someone who likes playing higher player counts without having to play a 3-hour game every time, it sort of is that gap of games where that doesn't quite fit with me. Now, that being said, I'm always open to new experiences and new games, and that's sort of what I'm wondering they're going to bring to the table with Burncycle. Are they going to change anything? Like I said with Moonrakers, like I said with Uprising Curse of the Last Emperor, addressing some of the downsides. How do you respond to some of the criticism? Now, this is going to have some new content. This reminds me very much in the sense of Cloudspire. We don't know what's actually going to be available in terms of content new-wise, but I would imagine maybe an expansion or two? Sort of TMB style, if you will, from that aspect. The whole concept of this game, if we go back over to the previous Kickstarter page, is that it's a puzzle. It's an action programming sense of progression through various levels of a building, trying to hack it, trying to get the information via terminal and actions that you are selecting in order to achieve your end goal. You're playing as the robots trying to get out of the thumb of human oppression, which, is a very unique theme. The aesthetic is super pleasing. If you actually go over to the Board Game Geek page, similarly, with a lot of the other Chip Theory games, the reviews are relatively well positive. I mean, it's got an 8.5 rating right now with the limited reviews, but I think just like a lot of the heavy Euro games, this game is going to attract only those that are seriously interested in the first place. And that goes back to the comment earlier that I wish there was something that allowed a little bit easier entry point, because Chip Theory games are not as great about that as they, other companies can be. And that's okay, because this isn't meant to be for everybody. I just personally wish that I could invest in some of these, but they have just never worked out. But if you are a fan of this, if you are a fan of Cloudspire, this looks very much like that to me, more in terms of the overarching puzzle that it's offering to you as you're going through these corporations, trying to avoid getting enough threat, trying to get booted off the server, trying to make it to the CEO's room so you can get the information and hack the network as you need to in the end. This is going to raise a ton of money. And it's going to be interesting to see whether or not they do any more of these strategists, because they had the strategist pledge on, what was the latest one? The last one from Too Many Bones. I forget the name of that one. But where it didn't cut off. And so I think, or maybe it was the one before that, they haven't, or they're not going to do strategist pledges, or they're going to be very limited again. So that's probably the other interest, that people are going to be literally hitting F5 to see if they can get around for it. But if you have any interest, it's guaranteed to raise a couple $100,000. So we'll see what new pieces they can put out there for the Burncycle collection when it launches on the 19th. Also launching on the 19th, we have a very interesting game called Silver Coin Age of Monster Hunters. I have one of the prototypes right now, so I can talk a little bit more about it without giving too many spoilers. This is a 1 to 5 player game where you are literally traveling across the map, trying to, in a cooperative sense, slay monsters. Complete missions, tackle challenges, handle quests, gain magic. You can play it competitive as well, and you can also play it solo. So it's giving you the whole gamut of what you may want to experience. If you go over to the Board Game Geek page here, they're doing a really good job of putting a lot of information out there about the basic concept of the game, where you have 6 kingdoms that are besieged by monsters that are united in the common sense of, earning the cash in order to get rid of those monsters. You have your various heroes that you're going to be able to get, and then they kind of go through the reward system, the destinations in terms of where you're going to be going in those 6 kingdoms that I mentioned, and there's just a lot of information, a lot of lore, and a lot of background that they have put out there, even in terms of some of the background focus, the magic, the environment, everything along those lines. A little bit of information on their website. Going to be miniature driven, so I expect the price point to be closer to 3 digits rather than an easy 2. Additional add-ons, playmats, things like that. But it's going to be an interesting test because it really gives me, with the overview of sort of what it looks like on the map, a little bit of The Witcher with a few more points of interest along the way, but very similar in terms of the scope and the aspect and the dynamics overarching, even though the actual gameplay is going to be significantly different in terms of management compared to The Witcher as well. So I'll be having a separate video talking about this one a little bit more in depth later in July before the launch. So if you have any interest in this, definitely check this one out as well, launching on the 19th. So going back earlier in the month, though, this is a very interesting aspect of things. This is launching on the 5th. This is Star Realms Rise of Empire. Now, why are we talking about Star Realms again? This is a prequel, a standalone prequel campaign legacy game with permanently altered market cards via the use of the dreaded sticker. How do you feel about that? Stickers are often divisive. I mean, at least you're not ripping them up, correct? But they have a little bit of a video here so you can see about how they're going to change, especially the bottoms of the cards in terms of the effects and the abilities that those cards you can acquire are going to be different after you acquire them. There are also going to be apparently types of cards that are going to have effects, as they say here, 60 card trade deck featuring new mechanics like quote unquote when acquired abilities. So you're going to be having a 12 scenario driven campaign, objectives, victory points, unlocking worlds around them, standalone, or if you really want to combine it with the rest of the stuff afterwards, you can do that too. The price point is going to be the issue. That's going to be the real question of something like this. There's going to be 3 new factions in it that you're going to be navigating or managing or considering how you want to align yourself with. But is this going to be more like the Jurassic Park game? Or Jurassic World, that was, you know, a lot of mystery, a lot of hoopla, but unable to kind of tell what was going on and why to justify the price? Or is this going to be more in line with the price point of something like at a retail Pandemic Legacy? Because that's potentially something alternative that you're looking at. Now, I guess if you're a big-time Star Realms player, is this really going to be of interest to you, knowing that you can combine this with the other stuff later? That's probably the most intriguing aspect, because otherwise, contrary to almost every other legacy game out there, when you're done, you're kind of done. Now, you can make the argument, My City and things like that, but I don't know many people that actually get through that and go, oh yeah, you know what? I'll play a ton more with the end game board that I end up with. Most people don't. So that is more of the divisive issue. And I can't imagine that these are 12 long scenarios. So is it going to be worth it? Or what other surprises are they going to have in store? But we'll check it out when it launches on the 5th. So going back the other way, all the way to the opposite end now, we have Return to Dark Tower. Return to Dark Tower will be the first big test of Backerkit. This is launching on the 26th on Backerkit, and we'll see what Restoration Games has in store for us. If you go over to the Backerkit webpage right here, you can already see that there's going to be a second printing and a new Covenant expansion. Unfortunately, when you go over to the Board Game Geek page here, I know I'm going back and forth a ton, all it says is new heroes, new treasures, new corruptions to get in your way, more content. And the first expansion here, as it says, new rules, components to give more depth and variety. You're getting more heroes, obviously. You're getting Archright, fortified buildings to help the kingdoms, forbidden lore, and influence as a resource to form alliances. So it's been available at retail, but not really the alliances expansion. So if you're looking at it from that aspect, I know people that love it really love it. I've played it. I'm liking it. It was on my list of games that I said in that video like a month or so ago, a great game for somebody else in your game group to own that I personally am okay with not owning. So for the price point, I'm just going to pass on it. The electronics do nothing for me. I mean, it's a great Pandemic style game, but I'm happy not to own it because I also wasn't super, I don't know, I'm just not as big a lot of the time on the electronic pass and play sort of quest driven thing. Now, it takes a lot of the overhead. I would hate to play it if it was not electronically driven, because I have nothing against that style of things, but it just doesn't always appeal to me, which is why I'm happy to have someone else own it and not me personally. And hopefully, I guess with the other aspect of this is that the base game is costing significantly more on retail side of things than the first crowdfunding campaign did, and people are charging a hand and a foot for it on the secondary market with some of the other like not exclusives but just stuff that's unavailable currently. So if you can wait another 30 days or so and pledge and get it in like another year and a half, you can probably save yourself some money. But that's why you should know about it, and it's launching on the 26th, the first big test of what Backerkit is going to show us and what these pages are actually going to look like, because right now all we have is this landing page and absolutely nothing else. Now we have another interesting one here, and this one is sort of on the lighter side of things comparatively to a lot of the other games out there, but this is from Sinister Fish Games. This, I believe, is launching on the 12th, and this is Moon, in lines with their other games that they put out that you may be more familiar with, of Streets and Villages. This is a very similar aesthetic, but this, unlike the other ones, is more of a pass and build game for 1 to 5 players, as the description says. You're hand drafting over one of 3 separate areas in one of 5 different aspects of building your lunar base. If you're one of the leaders of any of those 5 distinct areas at the end of an era, then you're gonna earn yourself some significant victory points. There's gonna be a convoy of cards, essentially, market-wise style, traveling back and forth between places in order to change up the market in some way or shape or form to give you some variety on a turn-by-turn basis, it sounds like, as well as some reputation cards that are either going to be one-time bonus effects or ongoing effects depending on how you meet them and when you achieve them in the game. I wasn't really a big fan of either of the first 2 games, but this one has a different appeal. I like the thematic incorporation better, and I like sort of the tableau, I'm assuming, a la sort of Fantastic Factories sort of situation going on here, even though it doesn't look anything like that. But it gives me those vibes in terms of length, in terms of depth, and in terms of, you know, just complexity. And so I really like what I'm seeing, as opposed to the other 2, which really didn't do anything for me. So hopefully this one is going to give me a little bit more of a look-see, but it's going to depend a lot on the deluxeifications, the FOMOs, and the price point, along with a lot of these other campaigns that are going to be going up on a similar time frame over a similar period of, you know, I can only spend so much of this, right? So it's going to be interesting to see where this one falls and how heavy it hits, depending on the competition that it's going to be going up against. Now, the last one is going to be a dark horse, and I've only seen a few Facebook ads, so I don't really know what to make of it, but I'm going to give it a shout out because I could see it going either way. And this is Leviathan Wilds. It's supposed to be, quote unquote, and I'm quoting from the actual ad, I believe, a combination of Gloomhaven and Shadows of Colossus. And you may go, don't we already have a Shadows of Colossus type board game? Yeah, we already had 2 of them. One of them already funded previously this year on crowdfunding. So what is this going to bring that's going to be different from 1, the previous 2 games that attempted this mechanic, and 2, the comparisons that it's going to use? Because if you're going to use those things, you better darn make sure you hit the mark. Now, the interesting aspect here is they have definitely some of the Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion style, as you are going to be flipping through this scenario-based grid system in a spiral-bound notebook, and you have a potentially about 20 scenarios that you're going to be going through and traversing across the way. Now, it calls itself healing the Leviathans, but the Leviathans might actually be attacking you depending on what actions and what events they trigger, either you climbing them, going across whatever using your abilities, or that they're just going to be taking on their own turn. Now, it says 2 to 4 players, but is this going to be truly 2 to 4 players? I mean, when I think of the other 2 games, which names are completely escaping me at this time, it was really a 1 versus 1, even though you could play a 2 versus 2. And I don't mind, you know, 1 versus 1 games saying we play 3 or 4 players or up to 4 players, but I also mean that if plays like that, I really just always look at the 1 versus 1 aspect if you're like me. There's going to be some sort of deck management that goes along with this, where you're only going to have a certain number of cards, and if you run out of cards, you slide down on the monster until you reach one of these rest points. I'm assuming one of these are, you know, whatever color, and then your deck gets refreshed. But you're going to be battling along the way in order to make it to wherever you need to, and that's about all we know right now. We don't really have a good sense. They say there's going to be asymmetry in terms of the abilities and the decks that you have, but there's also going to be some aspect of advanced difficulty modes on each of these scenarios. So if the base is just too easy for you on an individual scenario basis, you can increase it to make yourself feel better about being able to beat something that's harder. If you pop over to their website real quick, you can see it's launching on the 12th, and they give you just a brief gif of what the mechanisms are going to look like in terms of how you're going to be moving across, evading and reacting to other damages or attacks, and again, trying not to fall off. You can read the rules apparently, which is new at the time of me doing this, because last time I checked, it wasn't up there. So if you even want to try it on Tabletop Simulator, you can. I'm not going to interrupt this video in order to take the time to read the rules and give you a quick synopsis, but I'll throw the link down below to the website so you can check it out for yourself, because I will probably be doing that after this video finishes filming. But it's a very intriguing concept. If they can execute it excellently, this has a good chance to be a nice dark horse sleeper hit, and you can check it out during the month of June when it launches on the 12th. There you go. That's it. Those are the 7. Those are the things that are caught my eye. Those are the things I have my radar on. I mean, there's a bunch of other stuff launching, but those are the ones right now that, you know, I could see myself supporting in some way, shape, or form, or at least making waves significantly in the community one way or the other. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Stay classy. Have a great day. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you want to see. Let me know how you're feeling about things coming up in July and how expensive June was already. So that's where we're going with this. And let me know what else you're excited about in July. What else did I miss? What didn't I cover? Because I know there's always stuff that I don't cover that you guys are like, oh yeah, what about this one? It's all good. It's all good. Let me know. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. What are you doing, sweet sweets?
This good.
Egg night.
Oh. Blue car. Blue car. Rabbit.